I'm Sterling. Nice to meet you. Excited that you're here on a wonderful Wednesday. The weather's getting a little bit nice. I'm with GAO. I'm not here to audit you, so you're in good shape. All right, we're ready to go. So today I'm going to talk about one of the important roles that GAO does provide, and that is the, I think this will advance okay. All right, another minute. And I'll get on the next slide, is that in addition to, if you're a government contractor, you know that GAO adjudicates any type of protest associated with your acquisition strategy and the contracts that you develop. But we are actually also, and this is the main job that we provide, thank you very much. That button, okay, great, thank you. We're a congressional watchdog. What does that mean? Well, that means that particularly my role in not only I'm over all of GAO in terms of science, technology, and engineering, but I specifically work within STAA, which is the Science Technology Assessment and Analysis Group. We are responsible for providing technology, science, advice, and oversight on behalf of the US Congress. And so we actually spend quite a bit of our time talking about AI, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about those discussions that we've had and why open data and open science is such a big, important part of this. So I'm going to talk specifically about how GAO uses AI. And the reason that that matters is that in addition to being a legislative branch agency, we also, and providing a lot of wonderful oversight that I'm sure the other feds here appreciate, but we do try to represent ourselves as an ideal agency. And so I am going to provide you with some guidance in the end that will help you understand how we evaluate AI, how we use AI within our agency, and then when we come and show up at your agency, the types of things we're looking for. So let's talk about what it is and how GAO uses it. And I apologize if we've gone over this before. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here yesterday. But it's important to understand that AI feels different than other technologies. You know, it really comes down to when we have an interaction with a chatbot that is responding back to us in a very human way, it triggers things within our brain that says, hey, this is an individual. This is somebody I can have a human conversation with. But it's not. And this is why we have a hard time sometimes with AI, is the companies that have produced these tools have done wonderful engineering and developed great interactive interfaces that allow us to have very humanistic interactions, but it sometimes tricks us. And we need to keep that in mind as we start working with AI. So what constitutes AI? So a lot of these tools, including the tools that we develop in-house, and we do develop tools in-house, and I'll talk briefly about them at the very end, but has this great user interface that is scalable, so it's very reactive, right? So it uses a lot of cloud infrastructure. We use the GOV cloud for ours, and I'll tell you, we use the Cloud version 3 system from Anthropic, but we use lots of other tools as well. But we have this wonderful interaction. We have training data. So for us, you know, we're bringing in the foundational model from industry and implementing it in a government environment, but we're training it with GAO data. So if you go to our website and you see all of those wonderful reports and evaluations that we produce, including the technology assessments of different research programs across the government and across the US, those all feed in as training data into our generative AI tool that allows our analysts to use it. Of course, there's a lot of underneath machine learning. It's not just a simple single model. We have our production data, and so on and so forth. And we certainly have operations and security. But I want to talk specifically about digital literacy. One of the things that is particularly important within our agency and that I want you to think about as we get into this open data and open science discussion is that it is important that as you start to use AI within your organizations, whether it's a commercial organization or a government organization, you're training your folks not only to be wonderful prompt engineers so they get the answer that they need, but to have reasonable expectations about what to receive out of the AI. And the previous panel was a great discussion group about it. Make sure people understand what are the limitations and make sure you advertise those limitations and you help people understand that this is a tool, it's not a replacement for an individual. And that's what our digital literacy is really all about. So, and I won't get into these because we don't have much time. So let's talk about open data and open science. So there's a lack of transparency within the AI industry. And it's for many reasons, but one of them is that the data is very large, it's vast, and the models are very large and complicated. So when you start to bring data in, there's so much of it, it's hard to describe. You've probably seen all of the headlines about the potential commercial issues associated with data that the foundational models have been created on. And so it's difficult to describe that data. Additionally, it's difficult to describe the training algorithm. It is very black box. In addition to being the chief scientist at GAO, I also teach a grad school class about machine learning and AI. This black box models are not new, but it doesn't add transparency to something that is complicated and difficult to understand. And so now all of a sudden we have this wonderful finished model that acts a little bit like magic and tricks our brain to thinking we're talking to somebody. So how do we deal with that? So the first thing is open data. Let's look at some important data that just recently came out of Carnegie Mellon just a couple months ago that talks about how models actually work in terms of accuracy and getting kind of up to the expert level in each domain. You'll notice that art, design, health and medicine, and humanities, and to make it really easy, the pink is the human. What does an expert know? And the rest of them are models that have been tested for reasoning in each one of these areas. The reason that models perform well is that those are subjects that have lots of contextual information. You can read an article and get a lot of information out of it. But the reason they start to fail in business, science, and technology engineering is because these are long and complicated processes that you do really need an excellent reasoning capability to actually implement. And so how the data feeds into the model and how the model is performing is critically important to accelerate the performance within each one of these areas. And if you look at the chart on the lower left side, you'll see the biggest area for error is actual perceptual error. And that means the model just doesn't understand the science, technology, or engineering that is being described within its training data. So when it provides you a response, it's incorrect. And it's obviously incorrect. And so the whole concept of open data and open science is try to accelerate this by improving the data and improving how the models are described. So the data is only as good as what goes in. You've heard it, garbage in, garbage out. So what kinds of issues can we do in the federal government to help? And this is a lot of what Congress is asking us to look into. So first of all, how do we produce standards that allow the federal agencies to make their data available to the model trainers? For two reasons. One, we want to improve the models. We want this productivity improvement that comes from the AI industry. But at the same time, we want accurate, complete data. So complete data is my next topic. The challenge of machine learning for decades has been, if you do not have well-represented data, you'll have blind spots within your model. And so there can be entire communities or populations that are left out of the model simply because we didn't train the model correctly. Think about non-cooperative face recognition early in the days when it didn't work very well for women or people men who aren't white, right? So these are real things that happen because we did not have a complete data set within our training model. Poorly maintained data. Gaps within the data don't always exist just because we're missing data. Sometimes it was labeled incorrectly. This is a particular challenge within HHS, where the NIH has, within the National Library of Medicine, has this wonderful collection of biomedical research information that's been funded by the federal government for decades. And it's a huge resource that's used by the molecular biology and genetics research industries across the globe. But it is deposited by some poor postdoc or grad student who says, you've got to take this data and get it in, and that's your job. The quality is always a challenge. And then, of course, the existing biases. Think about how we collect data. We collect a lot of data on people who interact with the government all the time or interact with industry all the time. But think about people who do not interact with industry very much. And I can give you an example like unbanked people. People who are not banked, we don't have a lot of financial information about how they live their lives because they're not banked. We can't collect data on that, so we don't know how to improve their situation because we're just not collecting that data. So we need to think through in an interesting way how to collect all of this information from all the different parts of our country. The last thing within quality and standards is that in addition to creating quality and standards within each one of the agencies, We absolutely have to make it across the agencies as well. We cannot have data that is of different shape, of different standard, a different quality going into the same model, because the models are probabilistic. They're not deterministic. They're going to kind of blend all of this data together, and all of a sudden we're going to end up with a poor model. So the way that you do this is through checks and balances. I'm running out of time, so I'm kind of accelerate into the last few things I'm going to talk about. But in the end, AI within GAO and with most federal agencies should be and is a team sport. It is not run by the data scientists. It is run by an entire community. Within the GAO, I am one of the chair people of our AI council, which acts in place of a chief AI officer. Within that council, we have all of the mission area managing directors. And we also have our attorneys. We also have our cybersecurity folks, our CIO, we have our COO. All of these people are important to make sure that you are implementing AI in an effective way, in a responsible way, and a way that actually helps your agency do their work. So let me talk a little bit about what we're doing within AI. So in addition to the reports you've seen, and so I'll point you to one I'm going to talk about in just a minute, which is our AI framework that we came out a couple years ago. This is the guidebook for when we go and look at how an agency has implemented AI to accomplish their mission. This is what we look at. So if you go to our AI framework, which was published in 2022, and I'll give you the reference in just a minute, that is a great place to start to understand responsible AI and AI governance. In addition, we are looking at new and improving ways of updating that and aligning that with the NIST standards and the Executive Order 14110. So all of this is blending together into a framework of regulation of how AI should be used within the federal government. We also are doing, in addition to foresight, we're looking at how we can implement AI in lots of different areas. Just this week, one of the wonderful things I get to do is I get to do science and technology talks on Capitol Hill. I do them at least once a month. The one this week was on AI in healthcare. That is a big area, big important issue, because not only is there lots of promise, if you go back to my previous slide, medicine and healthcare is a place where AI is particularly effective, but, there's a big but, privacy is a huge challenge because we're combining data sets that previously weren't combined, and all of a sudden we can identify people. So there's lots of areas that are important there. So this is our accountability framework. It covers governance, it covers data, performance, and monitoring. So you can look at the framework itself that was published in 2022, but you can also look at this year. We started publishing the evaluations that we did for the Department of Homeland Security that came out in February of this year, and I believe the DoD one just came out a couple months ago. So you can actually see how we've implemented our evaluation of the agencies who have implemented AI and put in good governance. And you know what? They're doing a great job. So it's all good news. So please take an opportunity to look at that. So with that, I appreciate all of the time that you gave me. This is a huge topic. AI regulation is going to continue to grow. Within our work on Capitol Hill, we have meetings almost weekly with different members about how they want to implement new rules to help AI be effective for the federal government and effective for everybody. So it'll be a completely different topic talk next year, but I hope that you guys are paying attention to it and continue to implement these within your organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sterling. Thank you for your service.